Sup y'all, and welcome to The Planet and Humanity, Part 2. In this video, we're going to be looking at the human impact on land and life by asking this essential question. What impact has human activity had on the land and with biodiversity? We'll start off by looking at the land. And as you can see on the map, more specifically at the world's forests, which cover around 31% of all land area on the globe. This amounts to around 15 million square miles. Compare that to the pre-industrial number of around 22 square miles, and you get an idea of how mankind has altered the physical landscape. The forests, and especially the tropical forests in the low latitudes, are vital contributors to the oxygen cycle, converting carbon dioxide into breathable oxygen. Now, deforestation is not a singular process, and it has been going on for centuries. But some of the main causes go to subsistence farming, more specifically things like shifting cultivation, but also commercial agriculture, which primarily highlights the clearing of forests for the grazing of cattle and other livestock. But also logging and the use of fuel are some of the major reasons for deforestation. And the loss of potentially productive soil to erosion has been described as a quiet crisis of global proportions. Land degradation affects nearly 40% of the world's arable land. Remember, soil is a renewable resource because with proper care it can recover. However, it is being used as if it were a non-renewable resource. A study in 2006 reported that globally around 37,000 square miles of croplands are lost to soil erosion each year. Now we turn our attention to the fun discussion of waste disposal. Now, the United States is the largest producer of solid waste, averaging around 4 pounds per person per day. Now that's containers, packaging, things like that. Core regions of the world sometimes even export their solid waste to the periphery in some levels. Now, sanitary landfills are prepared areas for waste disposal, including a floor of materials to treat seeping liquids. And this you'll find in the MDCs. But in poorer countries, often open garbage dumps exist, where the decomposition sends methane into the air, causing acid rain, and contaminants seep into the groundwater.
That sounds good. I'll have that.
Now, in 1980, the U.S. Superfund Act was put into play, which set up the EPA, or Environmental Protection Agency, which was designed to clean up sites contaminated with hazardous materials, also called hazmats. And it was largely inspired by two separate incidents. One was the Love Canal, a neighborhood in Niagara Falls, in New York, built in the 1950s, where around 21,000 tons of toxic waste was buried underneath. It led to many birth defects and health issues, and eventually the entire area was evacuated in the late 1970s. And there was also the Valley of the Drums, a 23-acre toxic waste site in Kentucky near Louisville, named after the waste-containing drums strewn across the area. The EPA began emergency cleanup in the 1980s and fined many companies to help fund the action. Still, the most difficult waste to get rid of is radioactive waste. Now, there's low-level radioactive waste, which has small amounts of radiation from places like hospitals or research facilities, but there's also high-level nuclear waste, which comes from power plants and nuclear weapons facilities. And there's no satisfactory means of disposing high-level radioactive waste, although salt can effectively block some radiation. One interesting example happened at the Yucca Mountain Nuclear Waste Repository in Nevada. Back in the 1970s, it was designated as a storage facility for spent nuclear reactor fuel and other high-level radioactive waste, although the project was terminated in 2011 when nearby residents strongly opposed its construction. This is a classic example of NIMBYism.
Get off my lawn.
And within the land, we see a great deal of biodiversity, which is short for biological diversity. Now, with more people, population pressure has caused greater extinction of new species, and human travel has also introduced species into new ecosystems. For example, in Australia, cane toads were brought in years ago to handle the populations of certain insects. However, because they have no natural predators, they are replicating out of control. And the same can be said about the Burmese pythons in the Everglades here in Florida. The modern monoculture, where you're producing basically one crop on a piece of land, has led to a loss of biodiversity, giving us fewer choices. Take a look at this graphic, for example. At the top, it shows you a variety of crops that were grown back in 1903 in the United States. And you can see, for example, 497 varieties of lettuce, whereas if you jump forward to 1983, you only see 36 varieties. And today it's even less. Since agribusiness is in the business of making money, they find out what crops actually sell well and they promote those. And some have brought up what happens if one of these crops that is so commonly grown actually has a weakness towards a disease or something. Well, then this kind of thing comes around. Back in 2008, the Svalbard Global Seed Vault, which is north of Norway, was opened up. It contains over 400,000 seed varieties, and its location was chosen because it's far enough north and at a high enough elevation that if our modern civilization was to end today, those seeds would still be preserved for years to come. To date, around 170 different countries have agreed to a global convention or agreement that calls for the establishment of a system of protected areas and for a coordinated set of national and international regulations. This agreement has proved to be difficult to implement. In particular, there is an ongoing struggle to find a balance between the need of poorer countries to promote local economic development and the need to preserve biodiversity, which happens to be the richest in parts of the global economic periphery.
Hey guys! Whoa, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later.